name's Mary Bedingfield Smith, and I moved here from Logan, Utah, and my position related to town is I'm the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I'm Don Gomes, and I'm the co-chair, vice chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I've lived here full-time for 4 years. Prior to that, we owned property and visited a lot. And then this was always the dream to be here full time. But there's some cool things to do here. Start with the night sky. It's just incredible.
Phenomenal, yeah.
The old house at Center in Maine.
There's tons of music, lots and lots of music.
Lots of music. And I think the other thing is just all you have to do is look around, and within 5-10 minutes you're on a trail.
You know, 80% of the population of the whole world lives someplace where they can't see the Milky Way. All you have to do here is open the door at night, go and look up. If it's not cloudy, you see the Milky Way. It's just stunning. There's a couple who bought the property right next to the last property that's in town, and they bought it specifically because Torrey is a dark sky community, and they're going to start a business on that property. Oh, another fellow. Oh, this is another new business that's coming. The Kiva that was sold, that's going to be a hotel sort of business. And he did it because we're a dark sky community. So that brings revenue to our town.
My name's Lenise Peterman, and I'm Helper City's mayor. I love that in a smaller rural community that you can have such a big impact. Because you bring different skills and talents to the table. So I love that about our community. I love the diversity of our community, the history, and the artistic component. What I strive to do is to take people and pair them with their passion. Let's say you're passionate about the river. I have a committee for you. You can join our river restoration group. You can work on the river. Same thing with historic information and our public art installations. So I really am looking to draw people in and get involved based on what their personal interests are, because then they become vested in the activity. We really have taken a position, especially with my election, was I said we can continue to react to unfortunate circumstance, or we can proactively determine who we are, where we're going, and to do that, I need you to all be engaged with it. And they responded, meaning the community responded in a very strong fashion. So they have become more involved. They've been given voice to what they'd like to see. And I'm just taking the mandates that the citizens are giving me to execute on behalf of the city. I believe the dark sky designation puts us on a map. It puts us on a map as an astro-tourism location, which is cutting edge right now. I think it will continue to evolve, and we will see multiples of that. But to be a new one would be key. And then I've been lucky to engage Stephen Goldsmith at the University of Utah, and Helper in 2019, we're going to be the field laboratory for the Dark Scholars program. So they'll be sending their kids down to help us with our light monitoring and help us achieve, you know, a reduction in light pollution and all of those things. So I'm super excited about that. I think I've been able to bring the community together to move forward in lockstep, as opposed to, you know, a group spinning off here or spinning off there. I think I have built some cohesion. I think I have built trust and belief and hope that we can be greater than we are today. So I think that would be the thing I'm most proud of.
Good morning. I'm Crystal White, the Associate Director for Friends of Arches and Canyonlands Parks. I'm also a co-founder of Moab Dark Skies and the owner lead guide for Moab Astronomy Tours out of Moab, Utah. Moab's a community of about 5,000 people, and they recently rewrote their outdoor lighting ordinance, as what did Grand County, to include night sky friendly lighting.
Hi, my name is Amanda Podmore, and I'm from the community of Bluff, Utah, where I serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission as the Vice Chair. I'm also a contractor for the National Parks Conservation Association, where my work in public lands conservation often looks at dark sky preservation.
Hi, my name is Devaki Murch. I live in Boulder, Utah. I am the Program Director for Boulder Night Skies, and I will be leading the discussion today with some of our dark sky champions from Southern Utah.
Light pollution is a threat because of the negative effects on humans and the environment, as well as long-term consequences such as biodiversity, economic, and cultural loss that cannot easily be reversed. However, in contrast to these other types of pollution, the negative effects of light pollution can be mitigated easily and cost-effectively. There are multiple reasons and benefits for mitigating light pollution inside a community: enhanced property values, being able to tap into a global astrotourism market, improved quality of life, energy savings, creating clear legal expectations, environmental management, community unity, and for some communities that are interested in an International Dark Sky Community certification, international visibility and recognition. Utah is home to some of the darkest skies in the nation and is actually a national leader in dark sky protection and preservation. Many communities throughout the state have recognized that natural nighttime darkness is an important natural resource, and they understand the economic, ecological, and cultural value of protecting the dark.
Welcome to the Dark Skies for Everyone discussion. Today we'll be talking with several of Utah's dark sky community leaders. Utah has some of the darkest, most pristine skies on the planet. What are some of the things that the communities that you work with value the most about the night sky?
One of the things that we value is the fact that the night sky is actually here and we can actually see it. Although sometimes, because it has always been here and still exists, it's maybe something that we take for granted. But when you actually stop and take a look at the night, then people are very happy to be able to see the stars and pick out all the nebulas, and also realize that this is the same sky that the settlers saw when they first arrived.
There were several variables that really led us down the path of getting dark sky certified. So a lot of those have to do with economic diversification and taking advantage of our natural assets like dark skies, and getting on the cutting edge of a tourism event that we think will become larger as we move through the years. And, you know, there's so much light pollution that people will begin to look for these types of areas, and hopefully will come and visit Helper to do so.
Here in Moab, our community's grown a lot since the 80s. And I think for us, you know, having that connection with the night sky kind of keeps a little bit of that rural character that we all really want to keep around, even though we're growing quite large for our tiny community. So it's really important for us to be able to go just a little bit out of town, or even just standing in town and see stars. So that's really the biggest motivation for us.
Awesome. And Moab, being a gateway community similar to Torrey, really brings in, I mean, obviously a lot of tourism and industry, and the businesses are dependent on the tourism as a part of being a gateway community with the parks. What do you see, what could you share about Moab growing and basically education opportunities with both residents and tourists? And then we can move into how Mary has done that in Torrey as well.
At the park I used to work at with recreationists, it's mainly like trailer lights and Jeep lights that they leave on when they're at camp that have an impact on the night sky. And a lot of that was just, we created a little trifold pamphlet to hand out to campers to just to remind them, hey, if you're not using your exterior lights, how about switching them off so we can all see the stars? And it had a pretty good impact. I noticed that most of the campground was pretty dark when you would go through. You'd see campfires, but not a lot of light. And with the community, we've done pretty extensive educational, lots of programming, talking about why it's important to preserve dark skies. And then also, we are offering a program because we just established ordinances in Moab City as well as Grand County. And we are offering a program for our local residents where if they need some assistance changing their exterior lightings to meet that deadline of 5 years, that they can apply with us and apply for assistance. So that's what we do.
Mary, you've done a lot of work with the Torrey community in implementing the Dark Sky program to reach the Dark Sky certification. And Torrey is the first Dark Sky community in the state. I know a lot of your focus, especially in gaining support, has been through education. And in doing so, it has also gained the attention of Garcane to be supportive of changing out a lot of the lights. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, thank you for asking me about Garcane. It's interesting the way I even got interested in Dark Sky. I wasn't really even aware that it was an issue until I moved to Torrey. And it was one street light in town, almost the first night that we lived here, that is the thing that propelled me into the idea of educating myself about dark sky issues. So that one street light made me go to the town council to ask them if there was a way to replace that light. And that's when I learned that, at least in our area, the communities themselves don't own the lights. They rent them from Garcane Energy. So those bright orange, high pressure sodium lights that I saw all over town, not only as street lights, but as security lights in town, individuals and municipalities rent those from the energy company. So at the time I started learning these things, I called Garcane Energy and began a conversation with Dan McClendon, who's the CEO of Garcane Energy. And Garcane happened to be right in the middle of restructuring the fees that they charged to people who leased those lights. And so the timing was just absolutely perfect for what Torrey was trying to do and go into partnership with Garcane Energy. So the way Garcane initially had people pay for those lights was they could either pay it through a monthly lease with a flat fee, or the municipality or private individual could choose to pay for the actual electricity that they used. And most people opted to do the monthly fee. So the old fee structure was everybody paid $9 a month for each one of their lights. So what Garcane proposed was, since LED lights were becoming more affordable, more energy efficient, more readily accessible, that if a municipality or a private individual purchased the light itself, the fixture, Garcane would install the fixture. And then the fee, the monthly fee, would be reduced from $9 a month to about $4.50 a month. So what happened in Torrey is Torrey had 22 municipal lights. So we needed to figure out a way to replace those lights, which we eventually did. But what happened with Torrey was that in their yearly budget, the amount of money that they were formally spending paying these fees to Garcane for their street lights, they cut that amount by $900 a year. And maybe that doesn't sound like a lot to a larger municipality, but for Torrey that has fewer than 300 people, $900 is a lot of money. And Garcane was supportive all along the way. The CEO and even the guys that install the lights, Philip Burr, Courtney Cropper, those guys were just fantastic. And then when it was time for us to apply for certification, Dan McClendon, the CEO of Garcane, wrote this wonderful letter. And I want to just read this one little bit to you about this, because one of the appeals that I made to the town council was, why don't we think about doing this because it can save the town money? And the town thought that that was a great idea. So even Dan acknowledged this. He says, through the efforts of the Dark Sky organizers in Torrey, Garcane has learned much about the benefits of the designation, but more importantly, we have realized the tangible economic benefits that come by conserving energy and becoming more efficient. And I just am thanking Garcane Energy all of the time. They're just the best partners.
I also, as a resident of Garfield County, I've noticed that you definitely have great articles in the Insider newspaper, which keeps everyone abreast of night sky happenings and what's going on, which I feel like is really important. And just all of that community communication. One thing that I actually just thought about is the campground right at the corner of 12 going into Torrey. And I believe that you had told me that the campground owners are awesome in working with you for the night sky thing. And going back to what Crystal was talking about with the Jeeps at the campsite and the lights and those crazy under trailer green and blue lights that do blinky things like you're at a disco. How does the campground owners mitigate those issues or approach people that are at their campsites?
Torrey has an RV park on the east side of town and on the west side of town. And I think the one that you're talking about, which is where 24 and 12 come together, that's the one that's on the east side of town. And that is actually in the county. And Wayne County doesn't have any ordinances about outdoor lighting. But the owner of that RV park, Tracy Potter and his family, Tracy is also one of the board members at Garcane. So he's aware of what's been going on with lighting. And so Tracy has really expended a lot of effort, and I know it's been money as well, to make his lights be fully shielded to protect the sky, because he is realizing that his clients are coming to see the night sky. And so they're expecting things to be dark when they get there. But even Tracy has admitted that he's had to do a little bit of education for his clients, because when they see the term dark sky, what they're expecting is there are going to be no lights, which of course that's not what that means, because we have to talk about safety and all of those sorts of things. So Tracy is now having to take on the role of being an educator about dark sky too. The RV park on the west side of town is in town, and the new owners, their whole marketing campaign for their RV park is all related to come to Torrey and see the night sky. So they actually have a policy at their park that they give to their clients that says, after this time, you can't have those bright lights on your trailer. And if they do, they just go around, politely remind people to turn the lights off, and that's what the folks do. So the RV parks are seeing the benefits of talking about the night sky, bringing people here for the whole community. We have so many visitors because of Capitol Reef National Park, and I know Crystal is experiencing that too in Moab. It's possible that visitors have the tendency to drive through Torrey, stop and buy a drink at the chuck wagon, move on to Capitol Reef National Park, and then off they go. But now that there's all of this talk and hubbub about night sky, tourists are now inclined to stay overnight, spend money at the hotels and the restaurants, because you see stars at night, not when you're driving through to another location. So I've seen businesses start talking about that as well.
So as a small rural community, when we first started talking about dark skies, the community became somewhat alarmed. They thought, oh my gosh, you're going to turn off all the lights. What about our neon lights? Just different kind of fears came up. And so we held some community meetings to talk about what dark skies really mean, which of course is not turning off the lights, but rather lighting constructively and properly, which would enhance safety and really give the town a nice look and feel in the evenings. So we went through quite the iteration with our community, because again, as an older community, they were concerned because people equate light to safety, and that is not always the case. And so we were able to show them examples of
shadows and how bright lights, actually you probably have a better opportunity to hide away and do things. So we had a great time working together with the community on what this means and the value of the dark skies and how that could be utilized as a tool economically for our community who's really looking to diversify. So, you know, the community, as it does, always comes around and, you know, got on board and was very supportive of pursuing dark skies certification.
So now I just kind of like to talk about where we're at in the world, kind of the night skies in a time of COVID. And what I'd like to pose is a couple questions, starting with what are the opportunities that you see that are presented to us as a community leaders in this time of a pandemic, in a time that we can't gather as we normally would, or we need to gather in smaller, more intimate groups as Crystal has with her dark sky tours. I think that the state that we're in right now as a world has definitely its positives and negatives, but having these smaller group gatherings could be advantageous. You know, it's definitely less income, less revenue as far as numbers, but when you really think about how you can have a much more in-depth, intimate conversation with the night sky, being quiet and really giving people the opportunity to share, the small groups are really nice. And I'd love to hear what you have to say about how you feel we're moving forward as communities at this time.
I have, with my business, I've only been taking groups that are traveling together, so it's cut down the size of the groups significantly. A lot of times I'm just taking out a couple people at a time. And I've definitely noticed that the conversations that we have about astronomy, about our connection to the night sky, they've gotten so much deeper just because people feel a little more relaxed and, you know, they're amongst their peers and or family, and so they're more willing to ask those questions they may not have asked in front of others, which has been pretty fun. When I did the other night, some guy asked me if I believed in aliens. It was a fun conversation, you know, because it's a real thing. And these are the conversations we'll lose if we lose our view of the night sky. And so it's always nice to kind of remind them that, you know, like, would you even think about that if you couldn't see the stars? You know, and usually they're like, no, I probably wouldn't, you know. So it's a lot of fun, and we're definitely getting a lot more time to educate about dark sky conservation and their ability to do their part even in a big city. You know, you can still make your home a lot darker even if everything around you is not.
I haven't really participated a huge amount with large gatherings for night sky related events, except in the past, Torrey had its Heritage Star Festival always in the fall. And then we also had our two monitoring events in the spring and in the fall, where we go around and just hold up the meters and see how much light's being put out into the sky. Those are the big things that have been happening. And of course, those are not happening now. In terms of education more intimately, my Night Sky Committee now, as you mentioned earlier, is writing articles in the newspaper. There's a monthly article that will say something like, this is what you can see in the sky during this month. And then it always is followed up by another article that's talking about something related to the night sky. For example, birds being thrown off their migratory paths because the lights in the night sky confuse them. So there's that effort for education. But also the Torrey Dark Skies Committee is creating a web page where people can interact with that same information. We want to acknowledge local businesses that are supportive of night sky as a pat on the back for the people who've really gone to the extra effort to help their lights be more friendly toward the night, and also as an encouragement to other businesses to do the same. And then we also have an effort right now to build a night sky information kiosk. We already have a design for it. We're working on funding for it now. And the thing that's nice about it is it's a pretty small venue. A local business has agreed to lease their land to the Torrey town for this kiosk construction. And so it's a small venue and it's outside. So in a time of pandemic, those are the sorts of things that you want to be participating in. And I can imagine that as people pass by or they learn about it through the website or whatever other avenue, that they will be gathering there with people that they know. So they'll feel comfortable being outside looking at the night together.
Amanda actually has just joined us. Amanda, we would love to hear from you if you're ready. A overview of how you have worked in the San Juan community with the native tribes.
Sure. In my professional capacity, I work with multiple Four Corners tribes to engage them in public land processes. And so I've also been looping them into this conversation around dark sky protection in Southeast Utah. And what I've learned is that there is a great interest in several of the tribes in protecting dark skies. If you look at Dene culture, Navajo culture, dark skies can be very critical to certain ceremonies. But at the same time, there's so much sensitivity required around asking tribes to participate in a process that will have, economic concerns to them. And so the way in which we approach tribes is something that I think should be done very, very sensitively in recognizing their different capacity constraints, especially during COVID-19. But also there should also be sensitive in recognizing the most appropriate ways to approach tribes in terms of starting with leadership, starting with elders, understanding the correct dynamics and procedures for talking with different tribes in the area.
So we were just talking with Mary, who, in the development of learning how to communicate with the community, that Tori is actually implementing the websites, the on-site kiosks, and different collateral that will be communicated with visitors and residents alike. How do you see the best way for people who are developing that content to find out what those protocols are and what the best practices are in their language and communication, so they can not necessarily be pointed in, well, what am I supposed to say, but more of how can we respectively talk about this and cite the proper things, have the right terminology as this moves forward. So it is sensitive.
Yeah. Well, like one approach that I have found to be really positive is approaching a tribal government through their administrator, through their chapter house leader, and asking who the correct people would be to talk to, whether that would be starting with elders or leadership themselves. And then I do think that you brought up a really important point, and that's the language barrier. In working with Navajo communities in particular, a lot of the elders who have a lot of this traditional knowledge and storytelling that might be wrapped up in a dark sky discussion might have language barriers. And so talking with the tribe about potentially getting materials translated into Dene or other languages, I think would be a really important step in that process.
And Crystal, this just totally came up in my thoughts, and that is within the park system and all of the parks that are here in Utah, which is a large mass of land, so much of that land has traditional roots and cultural artifacts and just importance that we need to be able to highlight in a way that reflects the value of it. How do you see that happening either within the park or outside of the park as advocates for the night sky and the places that we visit in these areas?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is kind of along what Amanda said, just knowing we're all fond of cultural stories when we look up at constellations and the night sky and stuff, and it's just knowing protocol behind, telling those stories. But I think when it's appropriate, and if you have someone from one of the tribes that's willing to come and speak, it's a beautiful thing to connect that culture, that local culture, with the night sky. Yeah, those stories have been around for many, 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 many years, and every culture seems to have a connection like that with the night sky. And it just depends on the culture and what the stories are, but it seems to me like most of those stories are how they pass on morals and norms in their communities onto their children. Like, this is how we behave, this is how we don't behave, and this is why. And so I feel like those stories can be a really beautiful connector to the space, to the people, to the landscape.
You know, people always say that music brings people together, literature brings people together, art brings people together, but the night sky truly does bring people together. And an example of that was just the last week when I was watching the comet with two friends, a father and his daughter. And Larry was talking about a time that he and his daughter were in separate places in the United States, but they were both in dark sky places. They were sitting out at this one particular night, and they saw this shooting star go across the sky and break into pieces. So later on, Larry's talking to his daughter, Chloe, and he's talking to Chloe about this shooting star that he saw. And Chloe says, "Dad, I saw that same shooting star at the same time you did." So even though they were in totally different places together, they were brought together because they had that same shared experience across the miles. So it's just really important to have these opportunities to bring people together. This is a good example of it.
It was extremely fun when the University of Utah came down and they brought these amazing telescopes, telescopes as big as me. And they put them up by Mountain View Cemetery, which is probably the darkest area of our community. And we had such a large turnout of community members and kids interested in seeing what they could see with these amazing tools. And it just really reaffirmed that pursuing dark sky certification was key, not only for our visitors, but for our community.
We started something a couple of years ago where just to kind of show people how truly dark Moab was already, we started having these yearly annual ballpark night sky programs. And it was really nice. People would just walk out of their homes and come over to the ballpark and see with their kids. And, you know, a lot of the people that work here work in the tourism industry. And so they don't often get to do fun things with their kids because at night, you know, things kind of just dwindle down. So it was a really neat experience for them where they didn't have to travel a lot. They could just walk outside with their kids and look at deep space objects through a telescope and learn why, you know, it's important to have skies like this and really see for themselves just how dark Moab really is and already. So it became something that was like a little bit of a sense of pride and a fun event that they're really looking forward to. And we had a few tourists stumble in as well, which was great. So they were able to see as well what it could be like in a community.
You know, I would build on what Mary was saying, and everybody has had that experience of true wonder in experiencing the dark sky. And so as you're working in communities and having these conversations, which might be somewhat difficult, you know, start with getting that story out of somebody. When was that amazing camping trip when they saw the Milky Way for the first time? Or where were they for the eclipse? Or, you know, what's the most shooting stars they've seen in the night? Start there and build up from that sense of wonder and connectivity to others, as you were saying, Mary.
I think there are several things that have to happen, especially in rural communities. One is find that champion, because that person, it's a multi-year endeavor really to pursue certification. People might think it's easier than it is. It's quite challenging. And you need to have someone who can lead the change through the community and help to educate the community, but they've got to be in it for the long haul, you know, because it took us 2.5 years. So you really have to grab onto that vision and hang on and continue to move it forward in order to achieve dark sky certification.
I think when we look at the areas that all of you are really dark sky leaders in, the Colorado, we're all a part of the Colorado Plateau. And Aubrey, what do you see as a overarching entity that really supports all of these groups? You have definitely supported all of us in so many different ways, in all of these counties, the parks, in helping us get the certifications, helping us implement programs, and truly actually bringing us all together.
Thanks for putting me on the spot, Devaki. I guess I would just say the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative is an initiative, and it's a voluntary initiative that just invites everyone together to celebrate the cosmos and mitigate outdoor light pollution. And I believe that it's important to respect the individual goals of all of these different locations throughout the plateau, communities, parks, whatever it might be. Some of them have the goal to become a certified dark sky place, which is awesome, and we support that goal. Others are trying to implement lighting ordinances to help protect their night skies. Others have different goals. So whatever their goals are, we try and support those, and never telling people what to do, trying to educate folks. I believe Mary talked a little bit about this earlier, but dark skies do not mean dark community. It just means using best practices to shield your lighting, use warm color temperature bulbs, to only use lighting when you need it, using technology like dimmers, timers, those kinds of things. So there's simple things we can do to help protect the night skies. And I really do feel that the dark sky is part of Utah's heritage. It's something that most people value when you talk to them about it. And if we work together, it's something we can protect. And the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative is all about that, protecting our heritage of starry night skies.
That's awesome. Thank you all so much. I think that kind of summarizes all of it from the perspectives that we've all come in with. Thank you again, and thank you.
Oh, hi everybody.